And you've just heard Growing Apart, the current single by Joe Goodall. And I'm delighted to be joined by Joe now. Hello there.
Hello, how you doing? You all right?
I'm really well, thanks. And thanks for
Good.
taking time to talk to me. First of all,
No,
tell us
thank you.
about Growing Apart. What's that about and how did it come about?
Growing Apart, it's a song that I wrote over a year ago now, way over a year ago, in fact, and recorded over a year ago as well. And it was just post breakup, really, out of like a fairly, for at least my age at the time, long-term relationship. And it was, I mean, it's probably still one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. And I think I was with my friend Callum and guitarist in the band as well. And he was going through something of a similar ilk, but different as well. And together we were just talking about, I mean, it's a very obvious and common concept, but just one that it's a different take. You know, when you're going to write a breakup song, it's very easy to go down the generic route of just, I'm heartbroken and I don't want this to be happening. And it's not that the song doesn't go in that direction, but to take the growing apart concept of it's almost slightly more, um, it's slightly more like the story of love rather than just the on face value the heartbreak of it. So we wanted to deal with it, the idea of that instead of us just being completely different people that are like in leading different lives now, it feels like I all this time that you spend with someone, all the pieces that you kind of merge in your life of like the jigsaw that becomes your life together, it's gradually kind of been taken apart and you're growing apart and all the different aspects of your life are starting to become individualistic as apart from each other. And so that was the way we wanted to take it. Um, so yeah, we wrote a song about that basically. And I remember sitting in the house the day before we were going into a writing session, just played these chords on the piano and sent them over. I was like, here's a starter of an idea. We came in and the producer had kind of built up a little bit on those, played as what he'd made, and immediately just things started jumping out, and you just kind of hit that train of inspiration. Um, and yeah, things just started spiraling from there, and we wrote the song. It was a fairly quick one to write, and immediately it felt really huge and really cool and amazing. It felt very reminiscent of all the different inspirations that both myself and Callum had, and but not too much so, not so much so that it was a rip off of anything, just different to what we've done, but in the past. Uh, but it felt like a nice kind of way of dealing with what was going on in my life at the time and Callum's.
That's interesting because it's clearly, a breakup song is usually a very personal thing, and it clearly is a personal thing. But to share the kind of writing of it, did that help you kind of better understand yourself, or what was the result of writing such a personal song with someone else?
I think realistically, and I think Callum would be all right with me saying this. I think for that song in particular, Callum and I have done a lot of writing together, and we can actually talk about this if you want at some point because I'm just out of the studio doing something completely new. But obviously, we're talking about going apart here. But a lot of that time I've spent in the last few weeks has been with Callum.
Okay.
Um, However, with growing apart, we had these kind of conversations because I mean, I was really down and out with this. I was properly, really like struggling to kind of just deal with any sort of aspect of life at all because I was just really heartbroken. The way that the circumstances that things happened in and stuff. Um, I think the main role that Callum played in that session was just like an emotional crutch, uh, as a friend, just being there almost. Like it kind of got to the point where like lyrically, I was really doing the lyrics. I was kind of the story. It was all came from me in that aspect for this song. Uh, but the ideas and the discussions that were had to create that inspiration were had together, whether that be on coffee breaks, whether that be on lunch breaks, walks beforehand, walks afterwards. Um, and I drew inspiration from his side of things as well when writing certain lyrics. The main idea, obviously, growing apart being based on both of our sides of things. But I think I you raise a really interesting point in that I don't know. I really struggle sometimes when it comes to writing lyrics with other people because it was some of the time. There's been occasions where lyrically writing with other people is absolutely fine, but when it comes to certain subjects like that, I think it's really tough. I genuinely think that in order to create something that is totally relatable to you, this whole concept of getting in a room with tons of people and writing a song with like loads of like professionals,
Hmm.
um, who are incredible at writing songs, that's that you're destined to come out with something that sounds incredible, but whether you're destined to come out with something that when you listen back reminds you of a moment in time that is so much a snapshot of how you felt in that moment, I think you're gonna struggle to get that. I don't know. I say that as someone that's never been put in that situation
Hmm.
and someone that dreams of being put in those situations to try these things out. So I'm not being scathing of any sort of processes that occur
Hmm.
in a more advanced part of the industry. By the way, that's certainly not what I'm doing. Of course, I'd love to try those things, but I do think I struggle with the idea of whether or not, from a purely personal, like artistic side of things, whether you really are gonna like feel that connection that like the songs are meant like a part, like extension of your
Yeah,
being.
no,
Do you
I
know what I
get it.
mean?
I absolutely
Um,
get it. Absolutely. So you mentioned that you're working with Callum at the moment again on new material. Is that a different way of working, or is that basically following what you've just explained?
it's it's very different. And I hope I get the chance to maybe speak to you again when it comes to actually the releasing of this new stuff that we've been working on, because that's going to be a bit further down the line.
Okay.
But it's a really exciting project. In. I wanted to do a body of work again, because a couple just nearly 2 years ago now, my granddad took his life and left me a little amount of money to do whatever I needed with, and I've been kind of tossing and turning with the idea of what I do and with my life. I want to pursue music and make this a full-time thing. So I kind of deferred university and I've gone full into music. And I thought this money, as much as it's a crutch in life, like what artist's story sounds comfortable at the beginning? Anyone that's done anything exciting with their career, there's always a book about it. And who's going to write a book about, yeah, this amount of money and I was fine. I just glided my way up the ladder. I felt like I need to be in an uncomfortable situation. So I've spent my final like crutch financial fallback on this project right now. And I've worked on it with Cam, worked on it with the whole band, but I'd written a number of songs, again, like lyrically, myself, and structurally a lot of it myself. And then Callum, being a fantastic songwriter in his own right, I took them to him as a friend and as a collaborator, and we looked at them, and Callum, in fact, one of the songs Callum and I just wrote completely from scratch together. We've spent a lot of time working on these things together because we have a very similar kind of process and inspirations, and to be honest, life. We're very alike. He's just a very good friend of mine,
Mhm.
and working on something like with someone that you relate to like that has been really exciting. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Apologies for going on a tangent when we're talking about something else, but yeah, it's definitely a collaboration that is working at the moment, and I find that exciting and really relieving.
Because well, actually, one of my questions was, are there plans to release an album or an EP or something else down the line? That's what you're hinting at. You don't need to tell me any more than that. We can talk about it, at a later date when things are coming out. But there's clearly, ongoing projects for you.
Yeah, for sure. The only reason I'm reluctant to talk about it too soon is because this is like I kind of hinted at it with it financially. This is like a little, uh, not a last ditch, but there's not going to be a time in my life without further support that I'm going to be able to afford to do something quite like this
Right.
off my own back. And I've created, and with the band, we have created. something that I am so proud of and I've never been happier with. It's so us in a way that maybe past stuff isn't quite. This is totally unique to us and the sound we've got. We work with we've been working with a producer Chris Marshall, and he may know of he's done stuff with like he's Jerry Cinnamon and Dylan John Thomas, Count BT, and tons of fantastic Scottish acts. But he
Yeah.
has really helped us create something that's very us, and so that's going to be the soundtrack to next year for us, and fingers crossed will be the future. But I'd like to see if we can put that EP, well, there you go, it's an EP, in the hands of maybe someone who can help us just take it that little bit further than what I've been able to do myself so far. But it's a who knows? It's really who knows. But fingers crossed people will relate to it when it's out. But I will definitely be in touch when that's nearer to when I've got some sort of a plan with what we're doing with it.
And going back to Growing Apart, I mean, it's a big sound on that. It's a great production on that. Was that something that Chris was involved in then, or was that yourselves?
No, Chris wasn't involved with Growing Apart, nor was he involved with the next single, the last single before we look at anything with the EP. Uh, and do you know what? This up to this point in my career so far, it's been really interesting experimenting with all these different sounds, and I think I'll always look back on this period of time as like I was really sure in what I've wanted, but very unsure with how to display it and how to put it across because I'm combating all these different things in my head of like, social media is displaying music like to the masses.
Hmm.
And it's like I'm 21, I'm trying to work out who's interested in what I'm doing. And online there's a much younger audience that really relates to certain things. And then on other platforms there's older audiences, and then you've got like older rockers that are really into certain things I'm doing, and live we have such an amalgamation of of people that come along to the gigs. It's really been hard to kind of work out who am I doing this for outside of just myself. Do I do this for anyone else other than myself, and then just let people that relate to it? And so I think there's so much kind of combating different thought processes of why am I doing this and who am I doing this for, and trying to actually just get back to the core root of what it always was, which is I'm doing this for myself, and the people that relate to it will relate to it. So yeah, it's just been because like, there's such a like an epidemic now of that I don't no actually don't mean epidemic because that makes it sound negative, but there's things sound really big right now. But then with like Jack Antonoff, the producer, his work, in the last couple of years has been doing numbers, with the 1975, Sabrina Carpenter, Taylor Swift, Bleachers, and that his production style is far more like close up and dry and raw. And I wonder and it's a completely different conversation that we don't need to get into, but with AI and TikTok being such titans right now of risking being the only way of consuming music, I wonder whether people will start to value slightly more raw.
Mm.
I don't really know what the word would be because it's I don't want to kind of like chuck slander in any other like format of music because it's all music and it's all art, but it's just about how are people going to be consuming music in 2 years' time in comparison to now. And so, like you mentioned, Growing Apart is huge sounding,
Mhm.
like sonically. Uh, and I think for this next piece of work that we've done, we've tried to go in the other direction slightly and just go what sounds like us
Yeah.
rather than what is on the radio at the moment.
I think that it's easy for me to say this, but I think that's the way to go. I mean, you talked about making music for yourself. You've got to love it for the start. And if you make it the best you can, then the hope is, and I think you'll find, you find an audience because those things come through. It is very difficult the way people this is a conversation I have many times with people on the show and elsewhere. The changing way that people are consuming music. To do a good a good piece of music takes time and care, but the way it's being consumed changes pretty quickly. I
Yeah.
was just talking the other week to someone saying when I started doing Scots Whay Hae, the website, people would send in CDs, DIY usually. They've made their own covers and all that kind of thing, and then that kind of disappeared. And then that's
Yeah.
coming back now. There's so one, things don't go in a linear way, and also you've just kind of got to. It's very easy, isn't it, to get distracted by all the other stuff. But I think if you concentrate in the music, I would hope that people would find it and
Yeah.
right. And you've got people that you're dealing with who would be great to ask advice from as well, who've done it before.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that none of that is to say that in fact, Growing Apart, it was one of the first tunes I ever recorded and wrote that I actually from time to time chucked on just to listen to and enjoy myself because I think I always, you always listen to your own work and critique it. But with Growing Apart, I love the huge sound and it's definitely a snapshot in time for me, just like everything I've done is.
Yeah.
And I will always love that huge sound. There's bands that sound reminiscent to that song that I will listen to on the daily. I've got such a broad love for so many different genres and that bands and sounds, as we all will. Anyone listen to this, and yourself, I'm sure included, that it sometimes you just need to not try and make a conscious decision as to what you're making and just let whatever feels right at the time happen. I think I'm just always going to be a believer in a snapshot in time kind of thing because I think that's the best way to eliminate that overlooming constant sense of overthinking what you're working on and whether or not this is the right time for things to sound like this or does this sound like it should. Well, it sounds like it felt in the moment,
Yeah.
and so in the future you might do something different, and that's the best bands. My favorite bands are bands that glided across genres and back again, um yeah.
And you mentioned playing live, and we've talked about the recording process, but what's the live experience like for you and for an audience at the moment?
um and for an audience, did you say?
Yeah, for yourself
Yeah.
and for the audience, what can people who come along expect from a Joe Goodall show?
Just a band, a band. Like I write the songs, but my favorite bands. I mean, I grew up on kind of like 70s rock, and then, well, like it's an amalgamation of the Who, AC/DC. I know these aren't all 70s rock, but Talking Heads, um, and watching kind of like the early Top of the Pops and Old Grey Whistle Test with my dad, and then kind of like 80s music started to seep in. And then when I started going to see live music, I mean, I loved Elvis Presley growing up as well. And then when I started seeing live music, I saw a band called 1975 at like this showcase event in Glasgow. And they were starting to hit the club scene pretty hard in the UK. And it was like 2 years after that they'd gone over to America and their first record had hit number one in the UK whilst they were away, and they came back and they were the biggest bands in the music, like UK, like grassroots music scene, or more than that. And I've been a big fan of the 1975 ever since. I love the band dynamic of these artists, Sam Fender, Biba Doobie, that even if like the songwriter is maybe one specific person in the band, it's the kind of cohesion and the excitement, so the energy. I like the idea of taking that. Do you know, like indie bands? There was this period of time where indie bands would go up on stage in jeans and t-shirt, and kind of like it would be cool to kind of be boring as anything and stand still, and like because that was cool to like act like you didn't really care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and it is cool if you can do that. I don't think I can because I've vibed so much that I would look really awkward if I tried to do that. So I kind of am embracing the more high octane energy side of things, and I've wanted to try and convey that with the band. And so in try and do things in the least pretentious way, be as uh arty as possible in a non-pretentious way, just in in how we want to convey the songs, but also just be like have fun. And so
Yeah.
I think that conveys through to the audience as well. We just try and have as much fun as possible, perform the songs as best as we can, but also with like as much energy as we can. And because without that, I mean, we need to be bringing people back into venues again, and I don't think I could do that if it wasn't for putting everything on the line and on those gigs. So no matter what the show is, we always just go on with as much energy as we would ever would.
Yeah.
So that's what the shows are. They're just good fun. This headline we've got coming up in December, on the 12th of December, is going to be really I'm doing a lot of writing for it at the moment and trying to work out what we do, what new material we play, but also just give the few fans that are come along that have followed me from the start and that have built up over the years what they want as well, so that it's a little taster for what we've got to come next year, as well as the stuff that they've listened to for the last couple of years that they've enjoyed. So,
And
yeah,
that's going to be at the Poetry Club, SWG3, on the 12th of December, yeah?
that's right. Yeah. I'm really excited for it. We've done it before, the Portrait Club. It's obviously a really small venue, and there's a very limited amount of things you can do on stage in terms of like set design and stuff. But what we'll just do to combat that, or to offset that, is just try and have as much fun as we can with the size of the room that we've got. So yeah, well, I'm working a lot right now to make that as much of an incredible night as possible. It will be really good fun. It'll be
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a great venue, and I think that'll be a great place to see you at.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for
Okay.
taking the time to talk to me. All the very best with the music when it comes. And I really would like to talk to you about that because it sounds
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
fascinating later on. But for now, thanks very much for taking the time to have a chat.
No, thank you.
And this is Joe Goodall and This Town.